All right, so elections in Syria, right? We just had the presidential elections, and well, there's a lot to say here, right? So just to give you the results, Bashar al-Assad, he won with 95.1% of the vote, and I think voter turnout was 76%, around 76%, right? And of course, in the lead up to the election, and of course now, they are freaking out in the Western mainstream media, right? Because for 10 years now, they've been trying to demonize Syria. They've been trying to enact regime change and, you know, coup the government there, essentially. So I want to go through this with you, right? Here's an article from the New Arab. It says, U.S. and European countries reject Syria elections results in advance. Wow, that is like next level democracy, right? So Western members of the UN Security Council, led by the US, France, and Britain on Wednesday, rejected the outcome of Syria's 26 May presidential election in advance, a position denounced by Russia as unacceptable. Quote, the failure to enact a new constitution is proof positive that the so-called election on 26 May will be a sham, US Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said during a monthly session of the UN Security Council on Syria. The regime, again, right, we have to go with the regime because Arab countries that are targeted for, you know, regime change are regimes, not governments, right? So the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, projected to win the vote under the current circumstances, quote, must take steps to enable the participation of refugees, internally displaced persons, and the diaspora in any Syrian elections. Until then, we will not be fooled. And France, they go on to say, France will not recognize any validity to the elections planned by the regime at the end of May. That's the French ambassador, Nicolas Dore. And without including Syrians abroad, quote, they will be held under the sole control of the regime without international supervision. So this is a very interesting thing to say because you know, they're saying that, oh, well, there are Syrians abroad, you know, in the diaspora, the refugees who have been excluded from voting, essentially, right? Yeah, by the West. Syrians were blocked from going into the embassy, into the consulate to vote by Germany, by Canada, right? So we have a list of countries here, right? Here you go. So these countries thought that it would be nice to you know, stop Syrians from voting. So again, you have to think about what that means. They're not just saying, oh, we don't recognize the results of your election. They're saying, no, we're not even going to let you participate. I mean, can you think of how outrageous that is? I really want you to picture for 1 second. Could you imagine if there were Syrian police standing in front of the Canadian embassy and saying, no, you can't go in. You can't vote. All right? Or doing that to Germans, trying to vote in the German embassy. Like, could you imagine the outrage? They would call an emergency session at the UN Security Council. You know, you'd have the entire mainstream media crying, and they would be like, oh my God, these brutal Arabs. Yeah, but it's okay when they do it to Syrians, right? Again, this is what people need to understand. This is my biggest gripe with all of this. There is an attack on Syrian sovereignty, okay? This entire conflict, this kind of behavior, they are treating Syria like it is still under colonial rule. I reject this. I do not tolerate this. This is unacceptable. I don't care what your intentions are. I don't care what no, I'm not tolerating this. Okay? They are trying to meddle in Arab affairs. And for hundreds of years, right? For hundreds of years, you have had Western colonizers, European colonizers, meddling in the affairs of Africans, of Arabs, and of course, many other places on the earth. I mean, the British Empire controlled 1/4 of the Earth's landmass, 1/4 of the Earth's population, right? Just a mere 100 years ago. So I am sick of this. I do not tolerate this. Okay? They are treating Syria like it is not even a country. They are trying to run the affairs of Syria. So this is unacceptable to me. And I just want to show you something from CNN. Okay? So let's watch this clip over here. Let's take a look.
It's as if the last 10 years never happened. A defiant Bashar al-Assad running for an all but guaranteed fourth 7-year term in an election labeled a sham and illegitimate by the US and other countries. Running against two obscure government-sanctioned candidates, no one's expecting any surprises. After all, Assad claimed nearly 90% of the 2014 vote, during a civil war that pitted his supporters against those who wanted to overthrow his regime.
The international community should treat this, as I said, a non-event. It's absolutely not changing the economic conditions on the ground. It's not changing the political conditions on the ground. Syrians are just as oppressed. They will be just as oppressed on Thursday as they are today.
After a decade of a war like no other the world has seen in generations, most of this broken country, with help from allies Russia and Iran, is back under Assad's control. But Syria today is a shadow of the country he inherited from his father more than 20 years ago. Syrians are facing a hunger crisis, the majority living in poverty. More than half can't afford a basic meal, according to the UN.
Yeah, why do you think that's the case? Why can't Syrians afford a basic meal? Why are there 90% of Syrians living in poverty? Who put the sanctions on Syria? Bashar al-Assad? Iran? Russia? They put sanctions on Syria? Or was that the West? The Caesar Act sanctions. Where does that come from? That's Donald Trump. Who's keeping those sanctions in place? That's Joe Biden. The European Union, all these countries, they're not sanctioning Syria? They didn't cause this? I mean, this is preposterous. This is ridiculous. Dude, I've seen with my own eyes. When I used to go to Syria, so this is just up until the war, right? Every single year, all the time, things were improving. Infrastructure was improving. No more electricity cuts. You had running water. The infrastructure, public roads. Everything's being upgraded. Everyone could afford food. I never heard of bread lines. This is a result of U.S. sanctions. This is a result of Western sanctions. What does that have to do with the election? Like they're calling it a sham. Okay, can you explain how it's a sham? Right? Can you give me some valid criticisms that actually have something to do with this? And not talking about economic hardships that are the result of the West. This is unbelievable, man. This is crazy.
But through it all, Assad continues to cling on.
The Assad regime and its allies, they just want to continue to confirm that they will not budge an inch, despite everything the country has been through in 10 years, despite the fact that they're struggling to keep the country alive economically. They are still adamant about not changing a single thing. From Bashar al-Assad's perspective, this is an existential crisis. He will fight to the death. He said this many years ago.
Okay, so this is a 10-minute report. If you want to turn your brain to mush, be my guest and go watch it on CNN, right? So they're going to have some guy on now in a second who says basically that, Syrians, they're forced to go to the polls and they have the secret service, which is the mukhabarat, watching them, right? And the best part, right? So he said they're voting with their blood, right? Like it's a satanic cult or something. I swear to God, he said that, man. So... I talked about this with my cousin, with Roni, and, we just laughed our asses off. You need to understand something, man. Whether you like Bashar al-Assad or not, or whether you even care about Syrian politics or not, the majority of Syrians support him, right? You can, if you want to talk about rigged elections, and maybe it's like neck and neck, I could understand. But 95%, and you have 76% turnout, so what is that, like 14 million people? What are you talking about? Dude, look at this. I just want to show you people partying yesterday in Damascus. Just take a look at this, okay? Again, this is like a drop in the ocean. All right, so hold on. I want to show you a bit more because Ava Bartlett, she's over there right now, and she posted some footage that she filmed, right? So this is last night. She says in Umayyad Square, Saht al-Amawin. Check this out. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, look, man, I mean, it's indescribable, honestly. There were also pictures I saw in Tartus, which is on the coast, right? So, on the Mediterranean coast. I don't really know what to say, man. I mean, I didn't need these pictures to tell you this already. We kind of know this stuff, you know? Yeah, here we go. This is a picture I was talking about in Tartus. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I've never even seen that for a European politician. Never mind here. So I mean, this is just crazy, right? So look again. It's crazy because when you go and watch all of these reports on CNN or you know Deutsche Welle or any mainstream media, and they talk about the elections, they say, oh yeah, it's fraudulent, it's a sham. Yeah, but they don't tell you why. They didn't even mention what I just told you. They don't tell you that most Syrians support Bashar al-Assad. They don't tell you even the results of the vote. They didn't even say the voter turnout. Nothing. How can you talk about an election, any election, and not mention this thing? How can you say that? You know, if you're reporting on it, I think you should show some more than just, you know, bringing on opposition figures to say, oh yeah, he's causing what are actually the result of Western sanctions. Yeah, what does that have to do with the election? I don't know. They just, I don't know. Look, these are from the past ones, right? So that's from 2014, 2007, 2000. I mean, you can't rate, dude, that is obscene. That is obscene. So anyway, man, my point here is that regardless of what you think, you know, I don't base what I'm telling you off of these figures alone. I'm telling you just from being a Syrian, from you know, having seen how people are in the country. I'm telling you, most people support Bashar al-Assad. It's just the way it is. So you don't have to like that, but you can't deny it. You know, you can make criticisms, but you can't deny this reality. I don't know what to tell you. That's the reality. So, you know, if you want to come and talk about democracy and you want to talk about the will of the majority, yeah, well, that's the will of the majority. And, you know, you have to think about this logically also. The guy has been fighting Israel, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UK, the US, France, you know, God knows how many factions of jihadists, right? 50 flavors of jihad, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Jaysh al-Islam, you name it. Faylaq al-Rahman. You don't think after 10 years, Syrians would have gotten rid of him? You don't think he was in a position of weakness if they actually wanted him gone? Like, actually, if that was actually the will of the people, you don't think he would have gotten rid of him? Like, are you telling me that he's Superman? Because that's what you're saying. You're coming here and telling me Bashar al-Assad is Superman. Dude, there is no person who can stay in power if the people want him actually gone. That does not work. So, you know, I think it's very important to say that this is much bigger than Bashar al-Assad. Yeah, okay, he's the one who's been elected. That's not the point here. Syrians are sending a message is that they're not going to let former colonial, again, they're not former. I regard them as current and former colonial powers like France, right? Or Germany or Britain come in and dictate Arab affairs, Syrian affairs. That's not happening, right? We've had enough of 400 years of Ottoman rule and then a French occupation and Israeli occupation, and we're not having that. We're not tolerating that. You know, just look at Iraq. Look at what they did to Iraq in the name of freedom and democracy. Does Iraq have freedom and democracy? We're in 2021. That war is almost 20 years old. It's still under occupation. Where's the freedom and democracy? Where is it? Bloodbath. That's what happened, a bloodbath. So don't come here and tell me that these countries like Britain, who is passing these authoritarian laws now, like the Spy Cops bill, the anti-protest bill, the Overseas Operations bill, that puts people like Julian Assange in jail. You want to tell me that's a liberal democracy? Really? You're telling me the UK has the right to talk about civil liberties and clean elections? Really? After what they did to Corbyn and the Labour Party, that's clean? You call that clean? You have no moral high ground. These countries have no right to talk about anyone, especially given their history. On top of the damage that they've already done, Syria is still living under the consequences of colonialism. And not just Syria, but many African countries, many Arab countries, many countries around the world are still living with the consequences of colonization. And you want us to accept even more colonization? You want us to accept even more Western influence? A bunch of white men in Whitehall or Washington, D.C. deciding what is happening on the other side of the planet? I reject this. I do not tolerate this. It has nothing to... Again, this is beyond Bashar al-Assad. This is about sovereignty. This is about self-respect. You understand this? And so, they've also been talking about how when Bashar al-Assad went to cast his vote, he did it in Douma, okay? So, again, just geography lesson. Douma is, very close to Damascus. It's in the countryside in Ghouta. So Ghouta is a bunch of farmland, and Douma is on the outskirts. So, this is in February of 2018, you had Operation Damascus Steel. So, actually, I'm just going to pull up the map, right, to make it easier for you. So, let's go through it, okay? There you go. Okay, so now we're looking at Damascus. All right, Douma is over here. Okay, now for several years, you see this district over here called Jobar, right? Jobar and everything else here was under occupation from these jihadist groups, specifically Faylaq al-Rahman and Jaish al-Islam. And actually, those two groups are still out now in Idlib. They're all the way in Idlib now. And so they were occupying this, and they were shelling Damascus. They were just lobbing mortars, you name it, right? So I mean, my cousin Roni, his architecture faculty, they had, I think, a dozen students killed, just a bloodbath, right, in 2013. And so in 2018, in February 2018, the Syrian army, they launched Operation Damascus Steel, which is to take back Jobar and the entire countryside over here with Ghouta, all of this, okay? So they get to Douma after 2 months in April. They've taken back all of this. All of Ghouta is under government control, and it's just Douma left. That's the last thing. And the jihadists they're basically, they've practically surrendered. And then all of a sudden, there's a chemical gas attack. How convenient, right? And then of course the US, the UK, and France, they come and bomb Syria because of this, and they've started a scandal for many years now, saying that a chemical gas attack took place there. There was no chemical gas attack, right? I mean, just on principle alone, if you believe anything the US and the UK say about chemical weapons after Iraq, after they lied in 2003, you are a certified dunce. You have no credibility, you have no brain. But on top of that, we have concrete evidence that, I mean, there was no chemical gas attack, right? The actual scientists who were sent there by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, they said nothing took place. How do we know this? Because we have the leaked documents from WikiLeaks, right? We have the internal emails with them saying, like, you've redacted all our findings. The preliminary report is not what we found there, right? So this so-called gas cylinder was placed there manually. The toxicology reports do not, and the symptoms do not match with victims of a chlorine gas attack. I mean, again, I've reported extensively on this, right? Aaron Matei's reported extensively on this. We've covered this. We did a video together on the channel. Go and watch it. We broke down how strategically, militarily, this made no sense, and then also just from the documents alone. So there was no chemical gas attack there. But nonetheless, right now, because Bashar al-Assad went and cast a vote there, right? They're saying like, oh, look, he's bragging, he's gloating. He went back to the site of this chemical gas attack, which never took place. And look, he's rubbing it in people's faces. Oh my God, he's such an evil dictator. look, man, I promise you there are so many valid critiques you can make. There are so many things that you could criticize him and the Syrian government for. This is not one of them because it didn't fucking happen. All right? But of course, they need this because this is one of the things in their toolkit that they use to justify regime change, that they use to justify bombings, and they did it. UK, US, France bombed Syria. And they've been using this ever since, right? Obama said it's the red line. Yes? And look at what they did to Iraq. That's also over chemical weapons, over weapons of mass destruction. So this is a propaganda tool. There was no chemical gas attack in Douma. It didn't happen, right? April 2018. That's a farce. That's a lie. We have literally the scientists themselves, the fact-finding mission themselves, right? Henderson, the leader of the team. They've all come out. They've blown the whistle. So the OPCWs, they're completely discredited. And, you know, it doesn't matter. The media, the mainstream media, they operate in an entirely different dimension, a different plane of reality, right? Where facts literally do not matter because they're inconvenient. So they're going to keep peddling this until the end of time, right? You know, in the past, it used to be that a bombshell revelation like this would cause, you know, a mainstream outlet or any news outlet to issue a correction. Yes, they would come and say, well, you know, we messed up, and turns out this wasn't true. Even after Iraq, the New York Times issued an apology, which you can wipe your butt with because it's worthless. You killed 1 million Iraqis and now you apologize. That's not enough. And, you know, all of these, I think even the Washington Post, they all do these little apologies, right? As if that makes up for their banging the war drums and promoting war. Here, they're not even doing that. Right? It's gone. It's out the window, right? The New York Times, they still have this thing up on their website, which is like some kind of 3D interactive thing of the alleged room where this gas attack happened, which you can explore, like some kind of educational kids website. Yeah, it's insane. It's still up there. And they're all standing by the story. They still report it as if it's fact when we have leaked documents from the OPCW, toxicology reports, all of it, saying that this never took place. It was the canister was placed there manually. It doesn't matter. Facts don't matter because they want to undermine Syria. They want to undermine Syrian sovereignty, and they want to pick who will rule Syria because they are colonizers. These are imperialists. They are the same people who came and put boots on the ground, and they're still doing that. But there's the same people who came and raised their flag over Syria, right? Who raised their flag over Palestine, over Egypt, over so many African and Arab countries. But now they're doing it in a different way. Right? So they still want to exert influence. They still want to manipulate and to control the political apparatus of these countries and their economic endeavors and their resources. But they just do it in a different way now. So this is disgusting, right? I mean, I don't understand how you can take this stuff seriously, right? And it's not just this outlet, right? So on Reuters, all of them, they're all saying it like, oh, look, he went and cast in this chemical gas attack. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. How they completely deny reality, they warp reality to push this nonsense. So again, man, you know, I think it's really important to see what's happening in Syria as a giant finger of Syrians giving the finger to the West, to these colonizers, these imperialist scumbags, right? And you need to understand something. We have a saying in Arabic, although if I'm not mistaken, it's a Bedouin saying to be specific, right? So it goes in Arabic. أنا أخي على ابن عمي وأنا أخي ابن عمي على الغريب, right? So me against my brother, me and my brother against my cousin, me and my brother and my cousin against the world, against the foreigner, you know, against the outsider. And that's what people need to understand. When you have a situation, an existential threat, like what is happening in Syria, where you have 12 countries, you have 50 flavors of jihad coming in and trying to destroy the country and turn it into this, right? You see that picture on the left? That's in Aleppo. That's in Halab, the biggest city in Syria, the biggest population, the industrial center, right? And this is in Idlib, right? It's funny when you watch their videos or their pictures of these so-called moderate rebels, right? The sweethearts of the West, the darlings of the Western media. You never see any women, right? They're all at home. They're not allowed to go out the house. And when you do see them, they're dressed up like this. Do I need to tell you the stories of what happened in Raqqa, in Mosul, under ISIS? You think women have free rights in Idlib? It's astonishing, right? Because Everything that they try to portray the moderate rebels as, you know, oh, they're westernized, right? With El Jolani, for example, this scumbag terrorist, this Al-Qaeda terrorist who they dressed up in a suit, this monkey in a suit, right? They try to portray them as, oh, look, they're westernized. They have no problem with the West. They like us. You know, we have some common ground. The irony is that all of this stuff is actually true of the majority of Syrians, and not these jihadists or so-called free Syrian army or moderate rebels. That's the irony, right? They've completely, you know. So, you know, this is what they want for Syria. This is what the West wants for Syria. We're not tolerating that. Repression, this ethnic cleansing, the genocide, where they kill Christians, they kill again. The majority of victims are actually other Muslims, as is the case with all Western wars. You know, they suffer the most, and ethnically cleansing people who you know do not conform to what they want, blowing up hospitals. You know, they always talk about, oh, the Russian airstrikes and the Syrian airstrikes blowing up hospitals. Are you serious? Do you know how many videos there are on LiveLeak of jihadists driving up trucks to hospitals and blowing them up? Like, I can literally show you the video, like videos rather, right? So everything that the opposition do, specifically these so-called moderate rebels, they've taken that and accused the majority of Syrians of doing, and the Syrian army of doing, right? And what's messed up is that even people who had genuine hopes of like democratic reform or any kind of reform, their stuff has been hijacked, right? Everything's been hijacked. That's gone. Because now, I mean, this is the choice. This is the choice, right? But again, you must understand something. The majority of Syrians, they want Bashar al-Assad. I really don't know how to put it any other way to you. And if you are actually concerned about Syrians and you care about them and what they want, you would you would accept that instead of trying to impose what you know, London or Washington D.C. want, right? So instead of trying to impose Western agenda, you know, the majority of Syrians are happy with Bashar al-Assad. They're happy with having a secular country, right? A secular country. One that is multi-ethnic, multi-religious. The whole thing that makes Syria special is that it's a country with so many ethnicities, so many religions, right? So much history. And they're trying to divide that. They're trying to break that. And they've already done that with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, right? They carved up the Middle East based on sectarian lines, and they want to keep going and keep going. So that was a big, giant middle finger to the West. And it doesn't matter, you know. The choice is very simple. You can side with imperialists or you can side with the Syrian people. You can't have both. Why would you want to have both? So people need to respect Syria's sovereignty. End of story. End of story. That's not a discussion. We're not having a debate about that.